Guys, welcome back to Ed's Garage. Today we're going to start pulling apart this engine because I need a new head gasket. So, lots of work. Tonight I'm just basically just starting, pulling it all apart, just getting it prepped. First thing I'm going to do is go ahead and drain the coolant, drain the oil, and then I'll start working at taking some of the top parts of the engine off, like the air intake, the intake manifold, the air box, the air intake, throttle body. Try to get as much done as I can in the first hour and a half here, and then tomorrow morning I'm going to start head on with a friend, and he's going to help me out. So the way that I know this head gasket is gone, what's essentially happening is it's overheating after driving it for a period of time where it's been maintaining its temperature just fine, and then all of a sudden I'll sit for a while and the temperature will climb and climb and climb and climb until finally it's overheating. So the other way that I figured it out is just looking at my radiator fluid reservoir. I can see bubbles coming up. It doesn't happen right away, but as the engine warms up, suddenly you can see gas bubbles coming out of the reservoir, and it starts putting fluid out of the reservoir as well. It's actually spitting it out, and I'm losing fluid because of it. So if I look at the amount of fluid that I have right now, it's actually below the fins. I can't even see it. So I've lost enough fluid that it's gone down below the fins. Now, I hate to say it, but I did try some bars leaks because the engine's old, and honestly, I didn't want to have to do this. But one thing with bars leaks is, I don't know if you can see it in the camera, but basically what it is, it's a whole bunch of little tiny shavings of I think copper mostly, and it tries to kind of get into the little creases and cracks everywhere and clean it up. Or plug the holes. The problem with the stuff is, I mean, it really gets everywhere. So I imagine I'm going to be flushing the coolant system out a bit to try to clean it up. Alright, so without further ado, I'll get started. Now, by the way, that weird groaning noise, I apologize for that, but it's actually my light. I have a little fan mounted inside of here. So, actually, what I'll do is I'll put a rag between it and the hood because it won't sound quite as loud that way. Yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, so, as with most repairs, disconnect the battery cable first. Not with that one. So, first thing as I said, I'm going to be draining the oil and the coolant. Underneath the vehicle there is a coolant drain. It's a real pain to get to on this vehicle. So I'm not actually going to start with it. I'm going to go ahead and take that hose off first. Alright, so this is my air intake hose. Right here, there's actually it's a air pressure sensor. And down here, which I hope you can see, this is my mass airflow sensor. So a couple of sensors there detecting how much air is going through and what the pressure of that air is. Of course, the air comes in through the air box after it goes through a filter and goes into the air intake of the throttle body, which goes into the air, the intake manifold. Below the manifold is then mixed with the fuel in the combustion chamber. Actually, sorry, the fuel is mixed in with it right in the air intake manifold as well, actually. So, got that taken off. That'll give me a little better access to these hoses. So I'm not sure exactly how far down the radiator fluid is, but it's in this hose, so it's got to be at least, I don't know if you can see it from there, but it's got to be at least at this level, because I can hear it sloshing around in there. So I'm not just going to take that off, I'm going to actually drain it. So for that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the camera. All right, so what I did was I put a little pair of pliers down there on the drain valve plug thing, and made it a little easier to turn. One thing about draining out fluid or coolant, it's gonna be real messy. It's going all over the place. Yeah, unfortunately there's really no way around it, you know, short of pulling off a whole bunch of metal protection guards and stuff like that. So I'm trying to do my best to catch most of it, but it's a mess. It's got to be done. Alright, so with all the coolant drained, I'm going to go ahead and finish up these hoses. Now I need to take off the fuel rail, which is this one right here. Basically this is where all the gasoline is being routed through, and then each time it passes over an injector, it's going down into the injector when the injector opens. You know. So this is a high pressure fuel rail. Basically the fuel pump sends fuel up to, I don't know, somewhere, and then it gets repressurized to a higher pressure and then blasted through the fuel injectors. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the throttle cable, as well as the this is the cruise control cable, and then the fuel rail. And what I'm going to do is, instead of taking the fuel rail off completely, I'm actually just going to hang it up. I've done that before, and it's worked out. So that's what I'm going to do.
Good thing I'm skinny. Yeah, good thing I'm skinny. Can you leave the door open, right?
Yeah, the battery's disconnected. Alright, so I've got the fuel rail loose, as you can see. Now my original plan was to hang it up. I'm going to see if I can just take it right off, just to make life a little easier. So in between the fuel rail and the intake manifold, there's actually normally injectors. like this fuel injector. This sits down in the manifold. This comes up, the fuel rail sits on top of that. And this is just a little 2-pole electrical connection. And basically all that happens is the computer sends an electrical pulse here, very, very small, 3 volts for a fraction of a second, and it allows the fuel, the high pressure fuel, to go into this nozzle and blast out this end to mix with the air to cause combustion. Alright, so it's day 2 of the head gasket repair. Last night I managed to pull out the intake manifold. We can see right here. It was a real pain in the butt because there's 2 bolts on the back side here that actually hold on to the fuel lines, and they were right up against the firewall, so getting in behind there was a bit of a pain. And basically what I did was I lifted up the back of the transmission in order to angle the engine further this way away from the firewall, and then I was able to get in with my fingertips and managed to pull out these 2 bolts. So I had about that much space to work with, but I got it. So there it is. That is the intake manifold. That's what the bottom looks like as it goes into the engine. So at this point, basically these 3 holes right here, so not the big ones but the smaller ones, that's where the fuel is actually being injected. And there's air coming from the big holes, and that's where it actually mixes up before it goes down into the cylinders. So, well, first it goes through the cylinder heads, and then it goes down into the cylinders after passing through the valves. So this is called a multi-port injection system. Basically, multi-port, 6 ports, and 6 places where there's fuel being injected. There's also the older injection style where the fuel was actually mixed before it got to the different ports, so closer to the throttle body. That's an older style. And then you've also got direct injection, where the fuel is injected right into the cylinder, so further down the engine, right directly into the cylinders. That's the most efficient, but it's also sometimes the most troubling because the injectors can get clogged up pretty easily from carbon buildup. So in any case, I'm going to continue working on this. My buddy's about to show up and help me out, so you'll see 2 people working on it in a bit.
Alright guys, thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned to check out the next part of this video where Buddy comes over and helps out for the complete removal of both heads and the installation of new head gaskets. Again, thanks for watching, and until next time.